This is Inside the Life with Giovanni and Dutch, produced by the Mob Museum, presented by Levy Online and Levy Production Group. Giovanni, Rocco, and Dutch McAlpin are former police and federal task force operatives. They infiltrated drug cartels, outlaw motorcycle groups, and the mafia. Now, they share their stories. In today's episode, Giovanni and Dutch discuss how their undercover work intersected at the most opportune and dire times. Oh, and did someone mention a hot dog? We'll get to that shortly. This is Inside the Life.
I'll say that we worked with a lot of incredibly skilled undercover operatives throughout the world, right? You know, not just in our country and other places, but just solid people. So, but I think the time when we met, it springboarded us to a different level because the relationship that we had and the instant connection that we'll talk about and we'll share with you folks, you'll understand by the time we've finished this conversation on how it really saved our lives, each other's lives throughout the rest of our career. It was a game changer, I could say. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because when I went into my operations after I had met him and had a relationship and built a rapport with him, I was more confident in the cases I went into from that point.
Yeah.
You know, definitely. Because I knew there was somebody out there I can call that would get on a plane, get on a train. If he had to run that 3,000 miles, he's going to get to where I was. So we're going to be very cautious because we don't want to share tradecraft. We don't want to give away the skills that were given to us. We'll share things that were more that I learned along the way. Maybe that you taught me or something that I fed off of you. It wasn't necessarily taught to us in a classroom. So by this time in our careers, it was late in our careers. And when we did these trainings, we were invited back or invited to these schools to be mentors, to be instructors, to help the new recruits coming in, whether it was a local PDs or whatever it was, or state departments, and federal government.
One of the many different kind of undercover schools we'd go to where we'd sharpen our trade and also get together and train with each other in an undercover capacity. I had kind of established myself and I had gotten to know other people that were working in similar circumstances as I was. Mm-hmm. We were on a second floor and it was kind of set up like a party house in a way. I mean, like a gathering. There was a gathering going on there. And I was sitting at a large table with a bunch of guys and girls that I had known, that I had worked with,
right,
and that I knew from the past. And I was sitting there playing poker. And then I saw you come up the stairs. And I think you were bringing in one of the new people that was probably being trained at the time.
Yeah, one of the students.
And for the most part, the room was familiar to me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was... Where I was sitting was mostly guys with longer hair and big beards and the bikers, the outlaw dudes and girls.
Right.
And then you came up wearing this tracksuit. You had one of them little hats.
The Kango hats?
The Kango hat.
Right.
And I hadn't seen anybody wearing that before. And I wasn't sure if you were someone new coming in or if you'd been there for a while. At that time, I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as I do it, I noticed the loud card game, right?
Yeah.
Which is always a loud card game and a lot of yelling going on and, you know, yucking it up, and because you want to make it uncomfortable for the student, right? Because there's a lot going on. So for me, it was like when I caught my eye and I looked over there, you stood out.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait a minute, who's this guy? All of a sudden, I broke out of my instructor role into my New York attitude, like, who's this guy? And then as I'm walking along the room and I pass him off, I catch you looking at me. And you must have been giving me the same kind of, what's this guy look?
Yeah, definitely.
Now it's like...
It was curious, really.
Now you're going to stare at me?
Yeah.
Right? And it's almost like, you know, I guess I got to turn it up a notch, you know? And now I completely forget about the training scenario and I'm locked in on you and I go, all right, and once this kid's gone off doing this thing, I'm going over to that table and I'm going to find out what's this dude's story.
Most everybody else in the room was pretty familiar. I even if I didn't know them, I'd seen them, or I was like, nah, they belong here. For some reason, I didn't feel like I didn't know what your purpose was.
Right.
You made eye contact with me. You dropped the kid off to do whatever he needed to do for his training purpose at the time. And then you came, and I'm sitting here playing cards with all these guys I know, and there's a guy sitting directly across from me, and you come over, and you just kind of take his card game away from him, and you just sit down.
I did. You know, you might as well fold and get up. You're in my chair anyway. You know?
Yeah, you took his chair, not my chair.
And then all of a sudden, I sit down, and I just stare at you.
Yeah.
And I just, and you're staring at me and you're laughing.
You're talking to the whole table, but you're only looking at me. You're like, hey, what's going on, guys?
Yeah.
How you doing? You're not looking around and checking everybody else. You're just talking to me.
No. And you were the one, and I'm putting on a show for you. And it's almost as if we were in an undercover role, right?
Yeah.
We're not in the training scenarios. But it was funny because you kept giving me this look like, dude, what's going on here? Like, and you were looking at me weird, and you didn't catch on that I was another instructor. And you kept
I was confused.
Yeah, you were. And then later you fessed up. You thought I was an informant.
I wasn't sure why they were letting
Why they let
in
informants into these classes, right? Like,
thought somebody changed the rules,
right? So I was like, no, I'm not an informant. I'm a cop. Like, you're like, really? So we walked, got lunch. As we're walking, we shared a lot of just, similarities, and just we had the connection, and it just worked, And I remember that for the rest of that class, spent a lot of time together because we realized the similarities we had in life, our lived experiences since childhood was so weird.
It's just not very often that at the time, you and I were, we weren't necessarily special, but we were working independently by ourselves as like sole undercover on that case, sole undercover that case. And so it wouldn't be uncommon for us to come to training, meet each other once, and then not see each other again.
Right.
Because people are coming from all around the nation to different schools around the nation at different times. And so it could be possible you wouldn't.
But I think the bond with us was two police officers.
Yeah, it was definitely part of it for sure.
That was part of the bond. It wasn't that we were two undercovers. It was that the bond of being two police officers, our lived experiences, our experiences on the job, the things that we did, prior to even becoming undercovers.
When you're not around and I describe our relationship, I hadn't met anybody from the East Coast. I hadn't met anybody quite like you. And I've met a lot of people, and I appreciated all of them. But for the first time, I'd met somebody, like I said, when I described them, it's like exactly the same but different.
Right.
Like we're way different, but we had so many similarities, like almost a parallel life in the way that we kind of grew up, and different communities and different neighborhoods and different places, but still a little rough, but still with integrity and still with honesty. Like somehow it was hard for me to imagine that someone else could have maintained their credibility and still got to do the things that we were doing, and came from totally different places.
And I think that's what made it so good, because when we parted ways and we realized we're going to start working together, even when we're not together, it was like I didn't have to try to come up with another undercover and a relationship that I had with somebody. By knowing my life, and again, it's crazy for us to be sitting here now, not on the job. Our lives mirrored each other's so well that I could speak to somebody in a case on the other side of the world and describe you to a T, and not worry about when you come in and I introduce you that, hey, we got to have our story together, because I'm just telling my life story was so similar to yours. I grew up, wait, he meet my buddy Dutch. This guy's the greatest thing. Grew up in low income housing. He did this, he did this. I could speak to your life since we were kids.
And meet Dutch and meet Giovanni, both of us probably touched on how hard it is to keep track of a lie. Everybody thinks when you're working undercover, you're telling a pack of lies, but the reality is you try to keep it as close to truth as possible. So you were part of a case with me, and I didn't even have to have you there because just like you, I gave you a scapegoat.
Yep.
You gave me a scapegoat.
Right.
If I started to feel pressure from somebody, you like to use the word bona fides, I needed to build my bona fides, I could just mention you and describe you, and their imagination would take it from there.
Right. You and I collectively shared a brain. And then from that moment on, it was any apartment I had our pictures in it. Any apartment I had, like my refrigerator had magnets and pictures on it, or it would be pictures of me and you at a wedding event or at a christening or at something that, not from our undercover world. We went that above and beyond what we were trained to do.
My undercover phones, I had pictures of you in it.
Yeah.
It was nice to be able to, if I needed to mention you or I needed to describe you, to have the prove it's, I call it.
Right.
Oh yeah, here he is right here.
Yep.
This is what I'm talking about. And I know that based on the way I described you, when they saw the pictures, they'd be like, that's what I imagined it would be like.
Yeah.
I can see how tight you guys are. I can see, it's believable.
Right.
It was genuine.
And it was, listen, when I come from the phrase, I got a guy for that.
Yeah.
You were my guy. I got a guy for that.
Yeah.
And I worked meth, and I did, crystal meth cases and whatever it was, crank back in the 90s and stuff. But that wasn't my forte. But I could always lean on you, and vice versa. If you were doing swag, if you were doing some knockoff counterfeit stuff, that wasn't your wheelhouse as much as it was mine.
You're talking about swag. I mean, I knew about swag, but I had never been able to access swag. So When I met you, I remember you had I think you had a cardboard box in the back of one of your cars, and you had a bunch of football jerseys and jeans and tennis shoes. And I asked you, like, what's that for? And you started to explain to me that it wasn't really uncommon at all to have access to this swag, being by the ports,
Yep.
being in New York, New Jersey, where a lot of the stuff from overseas is coming in. And so I took what you told me to be true and correct, and I introduced it to people that I was working with in the Midwest or the West who had maybe heard of that but weren't able to access it. Right. And all of a sudden, it's believable because it's real.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and even when I went home and I wasn't working with you, if I worked with a guy that looked like you, if I had other biker guys, because again, I was a biker. When I was a young undercover, long before the guy you see in front of you, my persona was, when I was a young narc, I grew my hair out, I had my big long beard with the braids, and I had all my earrings, and that was my look, right? But as I changed and I went back to my true self and just, cut my hair and cleaned up a little bit, I always referred back to my biker days. If I worked with another guy or a girl that might have been a biker type, they knew or reported to Dutch. They were friends with Dutch. I worked with them because they were with my dear friend Dutch.
Yes.
And it was always a reference because that was my understanding. Because if they went bad or something happened with them or they couldn't make it, or if I had to bring in a Mr. Big type of guy,
and I think kind of, if anything else, sometimes you need an opportunity to not have the authority to make a decision. When you're working under high stress. I remember one time where I used you as an example. We were talking about meth. You knew of meth. I worked with a lot with meth. And I was going to buy a pretty good amount of meth from these guys, a couple of pounds. And what I wasn't prepared for was for them to be like, how much do you want?
Right.
Normally you're going to get a half a pound or a pound as maybe on a front, or you pay for half of it. And it's kind of a test thing, see if you like it, see if it's good. What I wasn't prepared for was, they're like, how much money do you have? And I kind of found the pause, and I didn't have an answer. So instead of answering, I picked the phone and I called you. And I said, how much money do we have? And they were like, who are you calling? I'm like, you think I have all the money?
Right.
And so I told him, I said, where I get the swag and all this stuff he has. I don't know. He controls the money. I don't know how much money we have. So I literally asked you on the phone, how much money can I spend?
Right.
And it was believable to them. Like, oh, okay, tell him it's okay. Like, whatever
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. Not that, it was always, what are you doing? How much you need?
Yeah.
Like, how much do you think you need? You need more?
But to the point, I needed that pause at that moment under the stress I was under to not have the decision making.
Right.
I put it back on you, even though he wasn't with me. I put it back on you, and that gave me a moment to breathe. That gave me an opportunity to gain control back.
It wasn't something they taught us. This was something, and I can't say that enough. I'm not giving up tradecraft when I talk about this because it's the way we grew up. It's the things that you saw in the street and what you described as the street and the way you keep your money in a sock and one here. And you never keep your money all in one pocket.
Never.
No undercover school ever taught me that.
No.
You and I talked about that.
Yeah.
At 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning when we didn't sleep and we just kept, jawing it up. That's when we learned these things from each other. Yeah, I do the same thing. I keep money in a sock. Yeah, man, I'm not getting robbed in the street. This way, if I do have to bribe them or I have to, guns pulled on me, I do this, and this. That was another level.
So what we did was we took what they had taught us and all the experiences we had at a basic level, and then we made it our own, our own personal thing.
Yeah, great way to describe it. Yeah, perfect way. And I think, as time went on, you worked some pretty high-profile cases with the cartels.
Yeah.
You would phone me. I'd help you out with that. And then ultimately, look, when I was in the thick of it with the DeCavalcantes and in Operation Charlie Horse, the case where I infiltrated the mob, when it came time to bring somebody in, it wasn't like I was going to tell the mob, oh, I got another Italian guy, I'll bring him in. I got this, I got that. My first thing was, I know who I'm bringing in. And even when I came to you, you kind of questioned me like, man, you want to...
Yeah.
How
questioned you.
How am I fitting in on that?
Yeah.
These aren't just a bunch of hang-around guys. I'm asking you to come into the mafia, into a crime family that I'm already in, and now I'm going to use you. But it's just something that I knew in my mind I had mapped out.
One time you said, I'm going to bring you in on this mob case someday. And I was like, no, you're not. I don't fit. That's not going to work, but that'd be cool. If you ever can, because we talk about it like it's all serious. It was fun.
Yeah.
We got to laugh and hang out together. It wasn't just about survival and just about being good professionals. I liked hanging out with you, man. You were genuinely my friend. You still are.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But you're right, because we didn't have a lot of downtime. Let's say we're in Vegas. We did a lot of operations together and independently. You're in Vegas, and then all of a sudden the op is over. It's not like you just took off your undercover hat and put your police hat back on. You were in undercover mode. Mm-hmm. You didn't break cover. So now it was like you either went back to your room and hung out by yourself, and you just isolated until the next rep or the next operation or, next meeting happened. And you just sat around, or you waited for your flight, right? And you just sat around doing nothing. So at least during the times that we did things together, then we can get out a little bit, chop it up.
Kind of decompress.
Yeah, decompress. Yeah. And we did. And even then we would stay up late hours,
Oh, yeah.
And again, I go back to it, and I know why, and we say it all the time, but because I always said when I left guys that we work with, and you and I, especially because we had that bond, I made it a point to tell people, my friends, I made it a point to say, because I learned from guys before me, to make sure they knew it, I love them. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds a little bit, maybe it's not, but I made sure a point to make sure they knew how I felt about them, that I love you like family, I want you to know it. And imagine that, right? Anybody has family and you feel that way about them, you want them to know, because God forbid after a house, after a family event, God knows what happens. But in our world, we're increasing the odds. We increase the odds and the propensity for violence, and just threw ourselves into the lion's den on a regular basis. And it was when I was operational, and then eventually you came in here. I introduced you early into that mafia case that I was in. So again, by this point, I was in with the DeCavalcantes. The guy that first introduced me took a shot at me and gave me some really crappy product. He gave me some crappy cocaine. I had to give it back in the street. That's when I first introduced you to the case. All right. Yeah. And I had no intention of physically bringing you in. It's just that I introduced Dutch. Yeah. And I said to the guy, you got to be out of your mind. The guy I'm giving this to, he's going to hurt you. Like, he's going to come looking for you. He's not hurting me. He's not coming after me. He's going to look to find you because you beat him on money.
And then I think to kind of touch on that, we talk about dealing drugs and selling, being involved in drug deals. It was common practice for us. We both understood that. But when you said you got crappy dope, the way I understand it to be is, if you truly are selling drugs like you would be portraying yourself to do, you're buying drugs to sell them. Mm-hmm. If you didn't call that out, if you didn't correct that, then that relationship with that person's over, because he's either going to take advantage of you, he or she, right, or he's going to know something's up. Right. You never let a point slide. You never let a gram go unpaid for. No. If you clocked it or weighed it, you put it on a scale and weighed it, and it was short 1 or 2 grams, even on a pound, you'd be like, you're short 2 points. You owe me 2 points. So it's important to keep your credibility that you called him out. But if you call him out yourself, it can be confrontational. So by putting it back on me, mm-hmm, oh, wait till Dutch finds out about this. Well, I don't know what you gave me, but I know it's shit, and he's mad. Right. And when he finds out, he's going to be upset. Yeah. I can see why that would help you. Yeah, yeah. You got to make it right. And he did, right? And you're right. He made it right, and he squared it up. But that was when the first time you were introduced to it. And then it was later on, much later in the case, when they had asked me to murder, do the deed of killing somebody inside the family, in the crime family that I was in. Then I knew at that moment, oh man, this is way out of hand now. Like, I have to figure out a way, Yeah. And like, my mind immediately started. But again, before I got the order to do the murder, you had been introduced. I'm sorry, we'll rewind a little bit. You were introduced when I was out here doing cases, when I was out here with my mob, Capo, mm-hmm, my captain, the guy who I reported to in the crime family. And I was reporting to him regularly, and he wanted to know what I was doing out here. And I introduced the fact that you were out here, my friend was out here, my friend Dutch and his buddy Mike, they're out here, they're just visiting, and then he got to meet you, just as a friendly meet. Because I wanted him to know that I had a background. I had a true life story. I had people in my life other than crime families. So when he saw that, and then when they gave me the order to do the murder, and then he kind of like, well, I said, who do you want me to use? You want me to use guys in my crew, like our crew that you have, guys that you have reporting to me? You want me to use your son? No, don't use them. You got to use somebody else. I can get somebody. And then he kind of like thought about it, and he goes, well, what about them guys? Yeah, guys, the guy Dutch and the other guy. Would they do it? Yeah, they'll do anything I ask them to.
And again, because he saw it. Everything that we just painted the picture, this mafia captain, he saw it. He saw it firsthand out here at Mandalay Bay. And he saw the dynamic between us, and that was like, yeah, okay. So I was at a meeting by ourselves when he said that to me. You were here in Vegas, and then I came and saw you at the New York. And just to show you how we were so in sync with each other by that point, when you're asked to murder somebody, listen, we did murder for hires. I don't know how many murder for hires I've done and you've done, this wasn't a murder for hire. This was different. Oh, yeah. This was one of those, if I don't do it, if the government doesn't let me do it, I'm not going to kill somebody, right? We're going to plan it out. But if I don't agree to do this, there's a good chance that the mob will clip me, right? As much as people want to say the mob is decimated and not around, they're very strong and they were around. This is 2000 and somewhere 12 to 14, 15. So I knew in the back of my brain, they just asked me to kill somebody. If I say no, if I say I can't do it, if I say I don't have the chutzpah to do it, they're going to clip me, Yeah. So I came into this with all this stuff out of the case. I came to New York, and I had to do a debrief with the supervisors and the case agent. And you were just looking at me. You saw me come in. I must have been 3 shades of green, or I must have been off.
Yeah, you were stressed out.
I was stressed. And, it was like, yeah, this just happened. And they were high-fiving, right? Because it's a good thing. It's good for the case. But then you were the one that was like, this ain't good. Like, you're right. I said, no, I'm not good. This is going to end my career. This is, this ain't going to be good for me. I think I vocalized that to you right away. And just, for me, it was good to have you there because, again, the relationship that we built, thank God you were there. It was like having a family member there.
Yeah, you were under a lot of stress. I remember that clearly. Mm-hmm. And by introducing me, it's kind of like when I talked about how much money do we have. It gave you a little breathing room, a little chance to plan, because when you called me and said, I want you to come out here and do this, I was like, I don't know anything about them. Right. I don't know anything about those guys. Like, I don't understand what you want me to do. And you explained to me, like, the goal is to collect that conversation because your guy, Charlie, wasn't going to do the murder himself and he wasn't going to be involved at all. So the conversation the only way to get him indicted and to get him charged with the murder was to get him to verbally express that. Right. And because you were so close to him, you were allowed to ask questions. That's basically how you explained it to me. And by bringing me in, me not being part of that culture, I'm allowed to ask a few questions. Right. Like, why? Where do you want to do it at? Yeah. Right. And that allows you to get that conversation that you need for prosecution and to make the case solid. Everything's there, but now you're just so close, you can't ask the conversations. By introducing me, that's kind of how you explain it to me. You can ask, I can't ask. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, yeah. And everything you described is spot on. Because even so, later on, right, months later, as we're planning a murder, and not to get off topic with the murder, but this just shows how we work together. I think it gives a pretty good glimpse. We did such a good job selling it to him, or selling it to them, and making them understand our dynamic together, that if they tried to take a shot at me, they knew they were going to have problems with you. Yeah, right? And how big is the army you have? Are you with an OMG, an outlaw motorcycle group? I never said if you were or weren't.
That's their imagination.
Let them believe what they want to believe, right? Mm-hmm. So when it came time for me to say, yeah, we're doing our homework. I can't pin them down. We're doing, we're out there, we're doing, I can't say surveillance because I'm not a cop, so I got to watch my verbiage. But I said, like, yeah, we're out there at night, we're trying to find him. I can't put him down anywhere. And he's like, he's always at the club. Just go to the club. I know, but I've been out here. I got them, those two guys, Dutch and the other guy, they're sitting on him and they don't know what he looks like. You know what he does? Well, give him a picture.
He gave you a picture.
I go, where am I getting a picture? I can't find them. Where am I getting a picture from? Just challenging him. Go on social media. I don't use social media. And he went right on social media, printed out a picture, cut the picture out, and he goes, print another one up. Because there's two of them, right? He says, yeah, there's Dutch and Mike. Well, they're each going to need a picture. What are you going to share a picture? Give them each a picture. Great evidence.
So now there you go, like talking about it from like the whole goal of an undercover operation is to collect this, in this particular case, this conversation, and now you actually have something tangible and physical. Like, I'll not only verbalize it, now I'll actually physically give you a picture. Right. That's that overt act that they need to have completed in order to make that conspiracy to commit murder indictment happen.
Right. So yeah, when I was out to dinner out here in Vegas, and Charlie Stango, the captain that I was reporting to inside the DeCavalcantes, I had gone to dinner with him, and we're discussing the crime family. We're just talking about the difficulties we're having with one of the guys inside the family, Luigi Oliveri, who had been recently a made guy, and there was a real bad argument going on inside the family. By this point in the case, the boss of the family was stepping down. He was going to pass the torch to somebody else. The family was fighting over who's going to be the next crime boss in the family. So all this stuff was going on, and there was a huge divide, right? Even in the older guys, the old school guys who had come up together, they were, guys that were best friends and came up and got made with my captain, Charlie, were against him now, right? There was that much of a divide in the family. And this guy, Luigi, he was that Achilles heel. And he was causing so much aggravation within the family that they decided that they were going to, it's easier to kill him. That's an easier solution.
Did he being Charlie Stango, is he the one that wanted Luigi killed?
He wanted Luigi dead for his own reasons. But yeah, I had some problems with Luigi, right? Mm-hmm. Business-wise, because Luigi initially wanted me and his crew, right? And because I didn't join his crew, and I joined my captain's crew, Charlie Stango's crew. Now there's little unit between me, Luigi, the two crews that he had and I had, and Charlie was, at odds with him. Yeah, Charlie wanted him dead. It was just easier for Charlie to kill him. I think Charlie was kind of looking for a reason to push it. But then the administration, I found out, I was sitting at dinner out here one night in Vegas, and we had a good week. We had a good score. It was a good month. So we were celebrating a good month and making some money in the street. Then we went to dinner at a high-end restaurant, and he started telling me about this whole thing, exactly what I just told you. We're having some problems in the family. We're trying to work it out. Keep your head down. It's going to get ugly, And he explained the whole divide. And I'm, in my mind, I'm processing, going, this is not good, man. I'm all by myself here. I'm not a made guy, I'm at best an associate who's like an acting soldier. Like I'm running a crew for Charlie. I got guys reporting to me. Charlie's son being one of the guys reporting to me, his son Anthony. So I'm juggling all these balls in the air, and who am I I have to figure out a way to bring you in, because I can't do this on my own. I have to make sure that somebody's with me. So he explains to me, and he goes, they're having a problem with it, and as he's eating his dinner calmly, dressed in his blazer, and we're out to a nice dinner, he goes, they're going to whack him out. They're going to kill him. I'm like, yeah, really? They're just going to kill him? Yeah, they're going to whack him out. And he's cutting his food, and he goes, I told him you would do it. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I told him you would do it. And he looked at me stone cold, and the look Charlie used to give, because you've seen it.
Move his glasses down.
No, he just looks at you, ice blue eyes, and he goes, why, you got a problem with that? You got a problem with what I just said? No, I ain't got a problem at all. And I'm thinking in my head, no, just let me go back and ask my FBI supervisors if it's okay that I kill this guy. And if they say, yeah, we're thumbs up, let's do it.
I'm not supposed to kill anybody.
And I'm like, yeah, listen, no, I don't have a problem with it. You know me by now. You're my, And again, we had a father-son relationship by this point. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Oh, you got to be your own man. And I said to him, no, you're my skipper. If you say to do something, I ride or die with you. I'll do whatever I have to do. So he's like, yeah. So he's talking about it. And I go, so what do you think? In the beginning, it was, well, you know what? Maybe for right now, I don't have authorization to do it, to whack him out. So you could run him over, throw acid in his face, cripple him. You don't have to kill him. But then he really wanted him dead, And then it was, so I said, yeah, no, that's a good idea. You want me to run him over with a car? Yeah. You know what I want you to do? Run him over, put him in a wheelchair, and then run him over again. And that was Charlie. So I was like, yeah, okay. And again, he was like, no, but for right now, he's probably going to go. I'll let you know. I'm waiting for authorization, but I'll let you know. And I was like, okay. I'm an acting soldier at best. Charlie had me running a crew for him, right? And just to give you an idea, the structure, right? It's set up very much like a police department, right? With the structure of it. So it goes where low-level, low-hanging fruit are just low-level associates. Guys that are not made guys are associates. It could be a guy who owns a deli, a pizza shop, a coffee shop or something. They're just associates. Guys that kick up. Guys that might gamble into them. They're associates. And
people just hang around with them.
Hang-arounds, yeah. And then your first level up is to be a made guy as a soldier, right? So your hierarchy goes the associates, then you might have a made guy. And
so does a soldier fall under the control of somebody? Does someone like direct them? There's basically a chain of command within the mob, the rules of the mob.
Yeah. So what happens is a soldier can be, they run a crew. They're the overseer of a crew, right? They're a made guy themselves. I might have a couple of guys that are made guys in my crew. I might have 5 or 6 associates, guys that are just good earners for me, guys that are out there running bookmaking, doing extortion things for me. I'm the made guy. So now I, as the soldier, I answer to a captain, caporegime, right? So the captain is one more step up. The captain has soldiers under him. So he's got, he can have, that captain can have multiple crews, right? You could be a made guy, I could be a made guy. Now we're each in a crew. We each run a crew, you're running yours. But now we start to have a little beef with each other. We could either settle it, go to war with each other, or we can go to our captain. And it goes up the chain. And then from there, the captain could say to us, listen, squash this. This is what I'm going to do. Dutch, you give Giovanni this much of whatever you're earning, and we'll settle it that way.
So is a captain basically like third in charge?
Captain is third in charge from the top. So let's look at it from the top down. You got your crime boss. You got your street boss, which is also your underboss. Over here, you might have your consigliere. Your consigliere is like a legal advisor. Right? Okay. He's the guy neutral ground. So what would be our legal counsel in a police department or something like that? He's a captain, but he's a little bit higher where if there's a beef, he's kind of the guy that comes in and says, all right, let's look at this at a, he'll mitigate things. And then going down, you got the captain, soldiers, and associates. So everything gets kicked up. When I'm making it in the street, I got to kick up to my captain. He's got to break a little piece off, feed it up the chain, So there's got to be this constant flow of money coming in. And if there's a disruption in there, like this guy Luigi, his big thing was he claimed to be a made guy, and he was a made guy, but the boss didn't. He made him the wrong way, right? He didn't follow Cosa Nostra protocol, from what I heard in the street and what we heard intelligence-wise too. The bureau was Luigi was hanging around every day at the boss's John Riggy's house and hanging around and just being a constant in his face, and he was 90-something years old. So Louis reported to Manny Riggy, John Riggy's son, the boss's son. He was a captain. So I guess before he passed the torch, they said, hey, you should make this kid Louis. He's been with us forever and this and that, So
can a captain make a guy? Can he make him?
Gotta go. There's a whole protocol to get made. Okay. You could propose somebody for membership, but it's got to go even to the other 5 families, all the Borgatas. So if I propose you for membership, your name literally gets written on a piece of paper. And then maybe that consigliere or another boss or somebody trusted between all the families, he's got to make his rounds with the list of names. So even in our family, he's got to maybe go to the Gambinos and say, listen, we're thinking about making this list of guys. Do you have an issue with any of these guys? There's so much protocol to this, And then they go, no. You know what? This one guy here, this guy Dutch, he's a good guy. But I had a beef. He had a beef with one of my guys or something.
So they're not going to give the blessing.
Just like promotions in law enforcement.
And if any one of them says no, then that guy doesn't get made.
Well, no, it's not a no. It could be, hey, we got some issues. So they review it. We're going to take a pass on it. We're going to shelf you for a little bit, and we'll circle back in a year or so, and we'll see. Maybe we'll make you later, And then you might be a made guy eventually. So that's the structure and how it works. So by this point, he had already met you guys. Right. He met you at Raffles. He met you at the breakfast when you handed me, you sent the Bloody Mary over to me, and that went well. But he didn't want to. After he saw you guys, and we talked about the whole when he called me on the phone afterwards and told me don't have you guys staying at the Mandalay Bay. I thought he would never want to meet you guys again. Right.
Yeah.
I thought, all right, he got a glimpse of it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's going to move on. But then when the murder plot came into play, there was a little bit more, he was a little bit more vulnerable. And I think it lends to my relationship with him, my personal relationship that he thought we had as a father and son, where he wanted to meet you guys and break bread with you culturally.
Yeah.
Right. And he called me up and he's like, hey, you know what? Let's go out tonight. Them guys, are they still here? Let's see if they want to come out. Yeah, they're here. You want to do it tonight? You sure you're good? Yeah, let's go out tonight. Let's go get something. We'll go down to the strip. I'll come down to the strip and we'll go out someplace. So I called you up real quick.
Yeah.
And, listen, I knew you didn't travel with all your dress clothes. So I was like, you got a button-down shirt?
And I didn't have what you said. We're going to go to a nice restaurant. You can't wear what you have on. Mm-mm. Get a nice shirt. I agree. Like, we were pretty sure we weren't really going to be involved at all anymore. I wasn't going to be involved at all anymore at this point. And when you called, it was last minute.
I don't think we need you again. You broke off.
Yes.
You and Mike.
We were just
right.
just out kind of sightseeing, exploring Vegas. I love it out here.
Right.
And we were in the Paris casino. And I was walking through, and suddenly you were like, I think we needed to be there like within an hour.
Yeah. Where are you?
Yeah. And I had on a gray hooded sweatshirt, and I definitely wasn't dressed to go to this fancy restaurant you described to me. So we started walking around. I finally found a shirt, and I was a little upset that the case agent would be pissed because I bought a $160 shirt to wear to dinner one time. Mm-hmm. So I got a nice shirt.
Sure you did.
It was black, had like red pastel flowers on the cuffs,
paisley,
and the big collar and everything.
Mm-hmm. I got pictures of it.
Yeah. Rightfully so. You were pretty nervous at that point. You were. I don't think you were sure what was going to happen. He had kind of called you out and said, "Get him. Let's go meet." And I was a little bit. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I do remember we went to a fancy restaurant
inside the Aria.
Yep.
Yeah. But and again, we went to the Aria. I'll explain why we were at the Aria and why we used it. But it goes. Everything you just said was the time. We had an hour. Where are you? Well, just walking around the strip, just hanging out. Why are you going to meet me for a drink? No, I need you right now. We got to go to dinner.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Well, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I don't care. Just go to the nearest, buy a high-end shirt, get a button-down shirt. Tell Mike to get a button-down shirt. I'll tell you guys we're going in an hour. And everything we described, how our relationship was. Usually, we'd have a sit-down. We'd come up with a scenario. We'd come up with a plan. We had no time to plan. And that's because you and I worked so well together, and Mike worked so well together that I wasn't worried. Yeah. Because no matter what happens in the next hour, I'm going to be sitting in front of this guy, right? And he is a human lie detector, right? I was not concerned. I was stressed because what does he want? Why all of a sudden does he want to go out and socialize with us? That was my concern.
Yeah.
So I picked the Aria because he said, just tell me where you guys are at. Once you get down on the strip, let me know where you're at. He lived in Henderson, and he was going to take the ride over. Now he's taking a ride over. Like, I'm like, wait a minute. I pick you up everywhere we go. Like, I usually drove him, and now he's driving himself. So I said, yeah, okay. I picked the Aria because I didn't know who was showing up with him. I didn't know what he wanted. So we don't have a whole lot of time to put surveillance on us or notify anybody. So the best way I thought how to do it was bring him to the Aria.
Safe.
Place, right? It's busy. It's got the shopping in it. Nothing's going to pop off there. And it's got great camera systems. So it's got state-of-the-art security in case he did show up. And again, that's our brain. Like this, you have to understand, when we're in this operational mode, that's the front part of our brain figuring out where we're going, what color shirt you're going to get, this and that. But the back of my brain is, I got to figure out logistically how this thing is going to unfold and how, 10,000 different things you're trying to figure out.
Yeah,
like
and that from your perception, that's how it was. And the same thing, like, there was a lot of pressure for me because you had described this person to me, and you described him as a sociopath, dangerous person.
Yeah.
But you had made it clear he didn't want to meet us or talk to us again, or at least it didn't seem that way. And now all of a sudden there was this necessity that he meet with us and you.
Right. And we're going to break bread.
Yeah. And that's
breaking
normal.
bread in our culture is we're going to have a nice meal. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk. We're going to get to know each other. Yeah. We're going to have a really nice meal. This is great.
Well, I think a lot of times the first date starts with having dinner together,
and then Charlie throws your
Thanksgiving,
food.
the family comes together, to sit together, and you start to talk to each other.
That's what I thought it was going to be. And it was. But then it was all of a sudden, Charlie threw us for a loop and ordered.
Yeah, we went to that super nice restaurant, and I was actually excited because I'm not used to eating in places that nice, not operationally while we're working. I was in less fancy restaurants.
Right, this place had silverware.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they weren't that bad, but no, this was a beautiful restaurant, and I was excited to finally be a part of this. And I remember we sat down at the booth, and he was dressed really nice.
Yeah,
I remember he had these big, thick frame glasses, and he had a nice suit jacket on. He was dressed very well. He looked, he represented in what, in my imagination, like a mob boss would look like. And so that was interesting. And then I had never been around the mannerisms, and I picked up on some of the mannerisms. And one of the things was when he wanted to talk to us or staff, he talked to you, and then you would talk to us or talk to staff. And occasionally he would look to me and have a conversation with me, but he told me to order whatever I want. And I think I ordered the lobster. It was awesome. It was great food. And everybody went and ordered all this fancy, nice stuff. And then he told you, hey, get me a hot dog. Mm-hmm. You said, I think he said something like, tell him to get me a hot dog, the waiter.
Yep.
And he got a hot dog. And that, I don't know what I thought about that, but it seemed out of place. And they brought this, it was a big hot dog.
It was huge. It was, yeah. It was extra oversized.
Yeah. And then he brought it over the table and he broke it up into pieces and offered some up. He put on the plates for all of us. And I had some hot dog.
Yeah. Have a hot dog. Yeah, come on, have a piece. It's a big hot dog. Yeah, have a piece. Have a piece. Yeah, have a piece.
Did he say something about prison, that eating hot dogs in prison or something?
Yeah, he always referenced prison. But that was his that was his defense. He saw you guys as ex-cons. He saw me as an ex-con, him as an ex-con, and that was his ingratiation. Yeah, he'd always make it a point to talk about prison because he was fresh out, you know, and that's what he knew. So he was still on prison time. His mannerisms of food, you know, the way he ate, what time he ate, he was still on prison time. But yeah, he ordered the hot dog, and I think I don't know whether it was because he hadn't had a hot dog or what it was. Or I
just know it stood out to me as I can imagine
jail food.
Anybody else in the restaurant who's enjoying a nice dinner sees everybody's dressed nice. Obviously, we don't look like we're up to anything good.
Right.
With me sitting there and you guys sitting there. But everybody's dressed nice, and somehow a hot dog shows up in this nice restaurant.
And you even told me, it's a good hot dog.
It's a good hot dog.
It's the best hot dog I ever had. Yeah, damn, this is a good hot dog.
It's like a rolled up bologna sandwich.
It was, yeah. So even much so, I'll go on to explain that we were on a T3, a Title III, or on a wiretap, because now the murders were planned and the murders were supposed to happen. Back home, they went up on a wiretap on his phones.
A wiretap, T3, a wiretap is basically where you get a warrant to listen to non-privied conversations, right? So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just so the people that don't understand what a wiretap is, we tend to use language and vocabulary they're not going to understand. A Title III is a wiretap. It's a bug, if you will. It allows people who do that to listen to non-privied conversations of the phone, and then you take the undercover work that you're doing and you pair it with the T3, the wiretap information, the collected phone calls.
Yeah, it goes into a court order.
So there's a T3 in place, a wiretap in place.
You go to a court order, you draft up your probable cause, you put the probable cause into an affidavit, you give the affidavit to the judge reviews it, he signs off on it, gives you permission to listen to the phones, you know, whichever phone calls. So, and you're right, you know, conversations that are...
It's not something they just give away. It's very protected. It's something
like bugging a place. It's like bugging someplace.
It's very intrusive, and the courts are careful not to just hand those out.
So as we're listening to the wiretap conversations, there's nothing better than the one conversation where my capo calls back home. He calls the bosses. He calls the administration. He calls the boss and the underboss, and make sure that I'm going to call tomorrow. Make sure you're together because I got to talk to you, all of you. So what he did was use the guy middleman. He used the guy, I think, Paulie Knuckles. So he used Paulie Knuckles. He calls Paulie Knuckles' phone, right? And we're listening on the wiretap, and it's great. Are they there? Yeah. All right, put him on. So now the captain, is going to talk to the underboss, and the boss is sitting there listening in. He says, can you hear me? Yeah. All right, yeah, listen, it's going to happen. Meaning the murder, it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And they're like, yeah, okay. And he says, I think he said something, paraphrasing. He might have said, yeah, we're going to put him in a river. We're going to put him in the Amazon. And they're all in code, right? So you have to decipher the code, right? But the best thing he says, and he goes, yeah. They're gonna come in on their iron horses, and he goes, they're like angels from hell, and that's exactly how he described you guys. And he goes, and that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna come in on their horses, and he's gonna be gone. You're good? And I remember because the conversation was like, yeah, whatever you're gonna do. No, this ain't what. And this is the kind of sociopath he was. He's like, no, it ain't what I want. It's what you want. You say you want this done, and they're going to do it. So when you have a conversation like that, you know, like, okay, we're in. Like, they're believing everything. It's just so refreshing to us as investigators when we hear conversations like that to say, oh, my God, thank God. We kind of understand what they're thinking. And from that point on, it was, all right, we have control of this.
Yeah.
You know, for us, for investigative-wise, I can take a little bit of a breather, but we still had to do a pretty quick job. And then before you know it, it was only a couple months after that, and the case was done.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And of course, that was the end of my career, right? And then shortly thereafter, you know, I don't know how short after because I disappeared, you know? I got relocated, and my career and my life got upheaved. and unplugged. And we lost touch with each other for a while.
Yeah.
And I had no idea you were going through the stuff that you were going through, what that relates to the job. And then I guess when the dust settled for me, because again, everybody, it's not that they don't like you. It's just that everybody kind of hands off, because you're being relocated and you're going through this nightmare of a thing with your family. So everybody's trying to give you time to put your life back together. And I didn't know, in the throes of my world and what was going on with my family, that you were leaving a job. I had no idea,
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, it wasn't abnormal for us not to talk. It wasn't abnormal. I mean, I didn't call you every time I had a problem or every time something wasn't going right in my life or work or whatever. So it wasn't like I was surprised. I mean, I knew you were going to have to be relocated. I knew that you were going to have to make some major transitions, and I didn't pester you with it.
No.
I didn't call and like, hey, are you okay, buddy?
No, God, no. I would have hung up on you.
Yeah, but we had an understanding when you're genuine and you're sincere that if you call me, I'm there. If not, then I guess you have it under control.
Right? That's what you used to say. Call me if you need me.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah, and we kind of skipped through from the time that we met and then all the way through till now you're leaving the job. But there's a lot of space in between, like I can tell you there's not too many people in your life that ain't blood that you introduce blood family to, you know what I mean? And I got to know your family and you got to know mine, and so we knew each other even more, and our relationship grew even tighter and stronger, and we were able to take care of each other a little bit.
Right.
I think, I knew it was really chaotic at the time because you left, retired, relocated, and then I went through some stuff and I had left and wasn't there anymore. And then when we finally spoke again, you had moved on and I had moved on.
Right. Yeah. You were literally living on an island.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. Where are you? You're living on an island. Yeah. Which led into us being here. Really. Honest to God.
Yeah.
It led us, everything we've been through led us to these chairs that we're sitting in right now.
Yep.
For behind-the-scenes photos, merchandise, and exclusive content, visit InsideTheLife.org. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts.